If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
You are listening to Mindshock True Crime. This is the Maura Murray series, episode 86. Off Campus. We will be examining what might possibly be the critical question in the Maura Murray case. Was something going on that Saturday night off campus? Everybody knows about Sarah Alfieri's party where she was allegedly blacked out drunk and doesn't remember anything conveniently, and Maura may have left with certain individuals. But was there another party off campus either before or after whatever happened in Sarah Alfieri's dorm room? Does this information on whatever happened off campus, including why Maura Murray even needed her father's car if this is all walking distance around the campus? And this, again, might be the critical point, and for whatever reason, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about UMass, silent UMass. But without any real conclusive evidence that Maura Murray ever left the UMass area, any logical individual would have to focus on where she was last seen, the UMass area. Not the least objective parties like Butch Atwood failing polygraphs, changing stories, and ignoring the police transcript from the most objective party at the time, Rhonda Marsh, the dispatcher, citing a man smoking a cigarette at the scene. Maura Murray's not a man smoking a cigarette. So we do have to focus on where she was actually last seen, the UMass area, and the circumstances of events that took place that Saturday night, which might have facilitated all of this and may have actually began the Thursday night, which we've gone over in detail. She may possibly have even been fired from her UMPD job. Again, we don't know, because for whatever reason, Karen Mayott's report is given the Area 51 treatment and cannot be released no matter what. But we do have Fred Murray's UMPD report. So, a lot of interesting information here. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help us keep up awareness in unsolved cases, cold cases, missing persons cases, wrongful convictions, and more, with logic and reason at the forefront in a world where it is quickly becoming extinct. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way with access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. So we are going to go to the Maura Murray Mindshock subreddit. Unlike the Controlled Sham subreddit, the official Maura Murray subreddit, and other subreddits where it's mostly just a bunch of obfuscators, Dunning-Kruger goofs, and known trolls trying to muddy the waters. So on the Maura Murray Mindshock, very astute poster posted this a few weeks ago. Is it possible Maura and Kate didn't go directly to Sarah's dorm room after dropping off Fred? And of course, the infamous statement from Fred, they said it doesn't get started until late. In Fred's statement to UMPD, he provides the following recollection of Saturday night, February 7th. She got a call from Kate, who had just returned from a track meet. We went to a student parking lot and picked up Kate around 9 o'clock. I asked Maura to take me back to the Quality Inn. She instead had me pick up Kate, and we went back to the ABC to the upstairs. So does that read as if Fred is driving at this time? Which doesn't make a lot of sense, because he's asking Maura to take me back to the Quality Inn. Does that mean Maura's driving? But then instead had me pick up Kate. I mean, he could have said had us pick up Kate if they were together. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of weird. After drinks at Amherst Brew, Fred states the following regarding a stop at a liquor store. When asked, did you go to Liquor 44 with the girls? At first, he stated no. Then thought about it and said, I am unsure if I did, if it was before or after ABC, the Amherst Brewery. I think it was after ABC. I can remember the girls walking around looking for wine and telling them to just pick up something. It is unclear how long Fred, Maura, and Kate were at Amherst Brew, but I don't think it could have been much later than 10 p.m. or shortly after on Saturday night. Reason being is that I believe the latest Liquors 44 was open at any of their Massachusetts location was 11 p.m. on Saturday, which still holds true today. So after Maura and Kate picked up wine and dropped off Fred at the Quality Inn, the timeline for Saturday night seems to get a bit lost. And that's curious. All the timelines seem to be a bit lost. Thursday night, Saturday night, Sunday. When did Maura get her phone back, if at all? Monday. I mean, there's no timeline that doesn't get lost here. All the timelines are lost and jumbled. And is that by design? Here's a quote from the Patriot Ledger, March 9, 2004. At about 1 a.m., Alfieri said she was passed out from drinking. Markopoulos was still up with Murray, and they were talking about going home at about 2:30 a.m. But Murray wanted to go to her father's hotel, according to Markopoulos. Quote, I told her to just go back to her room and meet him in the morning, but she wouldn't listen. End quote. Markopoulos said. About an hour later, Murray cracked up her father's Toyota Corolla on Route 9, allegedly, if she was the one driving. Is it possible Maura and Kate didn't go directly back to UMass, to Sarah Alfieri's dorm for the party after dropping Fred off? Is it possible Sarah Alfieri is telling the truth and she doesn't remember anything about Saturday night because by the time Maura and Kate arrived, she had been drinking for a few hours and really did pass out at around 1 a.m.? That's a curious question. Has anybody ever asked that question? Because it is hard to believe that if it was really early in the evening that she'd be... I mean, I don't know. I guess you'd have to know her. Is it common for students to be blackout drunk that early? I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to recall my college days. What's the earliest people passed out drunk? On a Saturday night? Huh. I mean, yeah, the Friday and Saturday nights, those were especially the big late nights where people were drinking later into the evening than normal since most of them didn't have to get up early. So I don't know. So is it possible Sarah Alfieri really is telling the truth? In other words, were Maura and Kate somewhere else after dropping off Fred and arrived to the party at Sarah's dorm late to where Sarah wouldn't have remembered anyway? From Fred's statement again, they were going back to the dorm. I told them it was too late, but they said it doesn't get started until late. I mean, okay, I have to dissect this further because, okay, a father of a 21-year-old college student, if it's, so Liquors 44 closes at 11, so if they were there before 11 on a Saturday night, a father of a 21-year-old college student is going to tell her it's too late to party on a Saturday night? Before 11? On a weekend night? I mean, I don't know what to make of that. Does that sound legitimate to anybody? I don't know. Follow-ups here. To note, as the reason I posted this, it doesn't get started until late means something different to a couple of 21-year-old college students compared to a grown adult parent. In other words, 9 p.m. was probably late for a guy like Fred Murray, whereas late for a couple of college-aged young women was something like midnight to 1, and possibly even later than that, depending who you're talking to. After all, Maura was said to be a night owl, someone who was up late into the night. I pose the question, were Maura and Kate somewhere else after dropping off Fred at his motel other than Sarah's dorm room? And of course, Bill Rausch early on stated that there was an off-campus party. This may or may not be the Phillip Street address or that neighborhood, including multiple frat houses in that area, which a certain concrete guy and his circle of friends from up in New Haverhill may possibly have known and visited, as well as another track team member that Maura Murray allegedly might have called last, connected to some kind of Springfield phone number, and possibly a different trackmate or the same one who are connected to the Londonderry area where the ping took place. Lot of curiosities here. Some other posts here. Maura certainly had a night owl schedule even for a college kid. Ordering food at 3 a.m., calling Billy Rausch many times very early in the a.m., finishing up homework, and other things. It seems they were elsewhere or trying to hang out with some guys, especially now that she was separated from Kate with a guy from Boston at some point from Kate's voicemail message. Plus, wouldn't it be strange if Fred and Maura were already at the ABC pub, then grabbed Kate and went back? Why would Fred do that? Unless they were using Fred to pick up the tab, ? Another response here. On the Oxygen show, Fred said he and Maura were out to supper at the brew pub when Maura bumped into her friend Kate. This indicates Kate just happened to be there to join them. However, in his statement to UMPD, Fred seems to make a big deal about Kate joining them and Maura at Amherst Brew. Because in the UMPD statement, he's stating that he wanted Maura to take him back to the Quality, and she instead had me pick up Kate. She got a call from Kate, who had just returned from a track meet. We went to a student parking lot and picked up Kate. Not exactly bumping into her at the establishment you're dining at already. I'm not trying to nitpick, but per Fred's statement, it doesn't sound like he wanted to stay out after supper with Maura, as she had him pick up Kate at UMass and bring her back with them to Amherst Brew instead. I'm not sure if it means anything, but I take it as Maura needed Kate with her before going back to UMass. I don't think Maura wanted her dad to just drop her off after supper. I think she wanted to use Fred's car to go somewhere else with Kate before going back to the campus for the party in Sarah's dorm. I mean, Sarah could have easily said something to Maura like, people are going to be showing up in my room at midnight, so just come in whenever you get back. I mean, another point that we really don't know, this is just pure speculation. This is, of course, Mindshock. I'm not alleging anything is true or untrue. If Maura did have some kind of stalker or she felt unsafe, would she not want to be at campus by herself? Because if she wasn't even staying in her dorm room, which has, again, been speculated about, if she was staying with a friend possibly around the Phillip Street address or somewhere abouts there, is it possible she just didn't want to be alone that Saturday night because she was afraid, so she wanted to be with Kate, or at least with one other person? So she didn't want her father to drop her off alone and then be alone for a certain period of time, so she wanted Kate with her at all times. That's if there's some kind of previous nefarious situation. If there's not, then it might just be a matter of partying. I don't know. Another poster posted this. Yes, and I am sure if there was an opportunity to get off campus to have fun, and Maura Murray now had reliable transportation, they would do that instead of hanging out in some tiny dorm like they usually do. But why the big cover-up and varying stories by Fred? And that's a good point, too, because if Maura hasn't been driving the Saturn, she's taken off the insurance, the Saturn's inoperable, possibly not even on campus at the time, since no CCTV footage has been released, so we really have no idea how long. If the Saturn was already off campus by that weekend, we would have no way of knowing that. So, again, these are all unanswered questions, but yeah, she can hang out at the dorm anytime, regardless of whether she has a car. But now, if she has access to a reliable vehicle, would she want to go somewhere else? Someone posted this regarding the cover-up and varying stories by Fred. Maybe to keep it all from Bill Rausch, especially since he and his family came as soon as possible. Okay, so now we're going to get into some dicey territory here, because obviously a father's going to protect his daughter. Now, with or without Maura Murray's knowledge, I mean, it seems kind of weird for Maura to ask her father to cover her to cover for her with her boyfriend if she's going to be cheating or whatever. But if she's possibly wants to see other people, especially if, well, maybe not cheating. Let's say they broke up. We have no idea what they talked about on the phone. So if they were if they had some kind of on again, off again, or they got into a fight, they're possibly broken up, Fred might not want to let Bill Rausch and the family and the Rausch family know exactly what's going on. So that's why he's making some of these statements to keep some information from Bill. Especially if he's unsure of Maura and Bill's status in the first place. So he might not view it as covering up for Maura's cheating if that's what she was doing. Again, I'm not alleging any of this is true or untrue. As far as we all know, they're already broken up by Saturday night. Another post here by this poster. Years ago, I believe before his book was published, James Renner said that Billy Rausch told him the party was off campus. I believe that was also might have been in a news article somewhere. I theorized that Kate and Maura went somewhere besides back to UMass after dropping Fred off. Perhaps to someone's apartment near campus, off-campus housing. It doesn't make sense, in my opinion, for Fred to be made to pick up Kate, bring her back with him and Maura to drink at Amherst Brew if the party was on campus. If it really was, it would have been much more logical for Fred to just drop Maura off down the road at UMass, where Kate would already be there before heading in. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Even if Maura didn't want to be alone, there's no reason to go back to Amherst Brewery. Fred drops her off with Kate. That's a good point. I think the purpose of Maura borrowing her dad's Corolla that night was to drive to somewhere other than back to UMass. I think by the time Maura and Kate did arrive at Sarah's dorm, it was much later in the night. Say midnight to 12:30. When Sarah says she was passed out and doesn't remember anything, maybe she really is telling the truth. I mean, maybe Maura and Kate did make it to her dorm for the party, but by that time, Sarah had been drinking for hours and forgot who was there. Another response here. I think Kate told different stories, depending on if she was talking to law enforcement, Fred, or Bill Rausch. I wonder, when she sent the voicemail to Maura about her and the guy from Boston, after they dropped Fred off during the time they were supposed to be at Sarah's dorm party, or after Maura left at 2:30 a.m., or the next day altogether, didn't Kate know that Maura left her phone behind? Did Bill Rausch already check Maura's voicemails after she called Bill Rausch after the Hadley accident? Was he checking to see if Maura was being truthful to him? Is this why Bill Rausch called Kate after lunchtime on Sunday? Was he trying to get the inside scoop first? That's an interesting possibility. There are more, of course, for those that don't know. This really shouldn't be your first episode if you're listening. I mean, there's plenty of episodes to go over before this, but Maura Murray was on Bill Rausch's, or the Rausch family phone plan. So, and it is unknown whether Bill Rausch also had her password, or whether unbeknownst to her or her knowing, to her email. I mean, obviously, a lot of boyfriends or girlfriends have each other's passwords with or without the other's knowledge, sometimes with, sometimes without. So that wouldn't be that shocking if Billy Rausch actually did have all her info and could keep tabs on her with or without her knowing. Another post here, just a thought here, perhaps when Maura was driving the Corolla during the early morning hours Sunday, she wasn't heading to her father's motel, but rather to retrieve her phone from somewhere other than Sarah's dorm. Maybe she left it behind at someone's apartment and wanted to get it back before Billy Rausch found out. From my understanding, the story that Maura left her phone behind at Sarah's and Sarah returned it to her later on Sunday afternoon has never been confirmed. I mean, a college girl would want her phone, you would think. Here's what I'm thinking. Maura wasn't calling Bill Rausch from Fred's phone at that hour to tell him about the accident in Hadley, but rather letting him know that she left her phone at Sarah's and can't get it back until later. That could easily be a lie if Maura left it behind at some guy's apartment. She knew Bill Rausch would be calling at some point, and she needed to buy some time as to why she wasn't answering her phone on a Sunday. Wow! That is a very, very plausible theory there. I mean, that is a really great theory, because obviously we can't trust anything Bill Rauch says. So we really don't know what they talked about at any point in any conversation. And that is actually really interesting. Does that also explain some of the emails, which Maura may or may not have written herself? I mean, this is tough. This is really tough, but that is actually a plausible scenario. She might not have told him about the Hadley accident, or maybe she did and also mentioned the missing phone. Yeah, lot of questions there. Another post, good thoughts, I agree. It is assumed Sarah gave Maura her phone, but I don't think she ever stated that. Sarah only said that Maura never mentioned the accident. All of that is odd. I do think she needed to return the car to Fred by the AM, then sleep all day. It all got messed up. I would lean to some funny business going on than what people what people think happened. Okay. So another point here is, what if the accident didn't really happen the way people think it did? Because if Maura wasn't even behind the wheel of the accident, then maybe she wouldn't mention it if it wasn't really her accident. Or if there was some kind of staging or highly traumatic event, or again, if we entertain the CI possibility, if Maura Murray was a CI and there was some shady business going on with UMPD, she probably wouldn't be going around mouthing off to everybody about the accident if it has something to do with that situation. She would be keeping it under wraps, so it wouldn't be strange for her not to mention that. Another post here, I don't think many people take into account the possibility that perhaps Maura was lying about some things going on in her life in the days leading up to her disappearance. Maybe even to protect someone else out of fear for herself or someone close to her. Maybe lying about the reason for the breakdown at work, the reason for needing to borrow her dad's car, who was really responsible for the accident in Hadley, etc. Maybe this is why Maura's disappearance has never been solved. She took the fall to protect someone. I actually brought that theory up also in relation to the alleged credit card fraud, which started some giant sting operation over a 2-digit charge and mugshots in hallways and all this insanity. What if Maura was covering for someone else this entire time, going all the way back to the credit card fraud? And if that all continued through the Hadley accident, through the parties, through all these other things, I mean, that would definitely cause some problems into trying to figure this whole thing out. Another question here by another poster, but was her downfall voluntarily undertaken, or was it forced by someone panicking because she knew too much? And then, of course, we also have the Vassy hit and run situation, where that particular Monday morning it was announced at UMass that he was in a coma and he wasn't necessarily expected to survive. Anybody could assume he might die because he's in a coma from a hit and run. So yeah, the knowing too much angle, CI or not, that could have something to do with it. Another follow-up post here, I leave open all possibilities. I think it's possible Maura was keeping something quiet or trying to take care of some problem on her own. What I don't understand is that in between the so-called breakdown at work Thursday night and Erin, the nursing student, saying it sounded like Maura was upset and crying when Maura called her on Monday, there doesn't seem to be anyone that saw or noticed anything off about Maura's mood or behavior Friday into Sunday. I leave out of the equation the Hadley accident. I mean, you would think Fred, Kate, Sarah, or even Maura's sister, Julie, would have picked up that something was wrong with Maura in the days in between. Up until the accident with Fred's Corolla, by all accounts, Maura was just fine, unless, of course, that's not the real story, and people did notice something was off. Or, as Fred always says, nothing before Monday matters or is relevant. Now, here's another point. What if Maura Murray did get fired from her UMPD security desk job? What if all those close to her actually knew about it? What if she flat out told her dad and Julie? They all know. Would they not advertise that because it kind of makes her look bad? And they really do believe it's unrelated to the disappearance, so why even mention that? Although, why, and I mean, it's kind of weird though. Would UMPD simply not release Karen Mayotte's police report stating that Maura was fired, if she was fired, and escorted off, as is common for people getting fired? Would, if, let's say Fred Murray requested that report be sealed to not make Maura look bad, would they comply just for that and deny all FOIAs? I don't know. Because if Fred really believes none of this stuff matters, then maybe he would fight to protect her reputation. Because it kind of, I mean, I don't know. She's fired, then she goes into this downward spiral of car accidents and all these things. Or, as many have speculated before, she didn't get fired, but her car, the Saturn, was used in the Patrick Vassy hit and run, even if she wasn't the one behind the wheel, and Fred Murray knew about that as well. And Saturday night was a strategizing session on how to dump the car to make sure it doesn't connect back to Maura. Now, if that were true, would Fred Murray admit in this act of conspiring? Because even if Maura didn't hit, so he's not necessarily aiding and abetting the known criminal if they don't know who it was. Like, what if Maura told them the car was stolen? Would they go to the police? Would they? I mean, if they could verify that Maura was at the security desk with all the footage in the common areas, you would think they would be open about that so the police could rule her out, unless Maura really is protecting someone she really cares about, in which case it is aiding and abetting. But yeah, I mean, this is really tough on why the secrecy, and if all the secrecy is about something that surrounding something that has nothing to do with her ultimate disappearance, what does that mean? That means it still wouldn't be revealed, right? I would think, because why would they come forward with it now and admit they've been lying and holding back the whole time, especially if they really believe it has nothing to do with what ultimately happened to her. Further posts here, many interesting new ideas in this post. The thing about Sarah having the phone is that the phone records match the story. The art gallery closed at 8 p.m. on Sunday, and Maura only used her phone at around 8:30 p.m. Could Sarah have forgotten to bring Maura's phone to the art gallery? So after work, Maura accompanied her to get it back, then as soon as she gets it back, she checks her voicemails. Or she could have got it back earlier, but she just didn't want to use it at work. Maybe. Especially if she got fired the Thursday night for using her phone. She might be extra vigilant not to lose another job by being on the phone, if that's what happened. Again, I'm not alleging it. Anything is true or untrue. Follow-up post here. I think that would be most likely scenario. However, I've never heard nor read that it was confirmed that Sarah did return Maura's phone to her Sunday night or whatever time. My other thought is someone else had Maura's phone and simply returned it to Sarah, who then gave it back to Maura at some point on Sunday. Or someone else just gave it back to Maura, if the Sarah story is not true. After all, unless another person knew Maura's schedule, dorm room, dorm phone number, etc., they probably would have to give the phone back to one of Maura's friends, at least in this scenario. Other posts here. I was wondering whether Maura may have realized some of her conversations or comings and goings were somehow known by another party, a stalker, so she purposefully left her phone with someone to avoid being tracked, but also to check if there was spyware on the phone. Now, okay, so this is 2004. This is early 2004. I mean, was there GPS, like private software that could be installed at that time on those early Nokia phones? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is not a smartphone specifically we're talking about, but theoretically it could have been capable. Follow-up post here. I find Maura, if she indeed got her phone back, checking voicemails on Sunday, February 8th, from 8:26 p.m. until after 11 p.m. interesting. Her only outgoing call is the one to her dad at 11:26 p.m. that night. I imagined Bill Rausch not only calling Maura on Sunday, but leaving voicemails on her phone as well. Then there's this email from Maura to Bill Rausch on Monday. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I wonder if Maura was ignoring Bill Rausch for some reason, and the email about getting his messages was a way for Maura to buy some time not having to speak with him. Or, of course, this could be another party trying to buy some time if it's not Maura giving those responses. Other post here. I think this is why Billy Rausch started calling Kate Markopoulos on Monday, and again a bunch of times on Tuesday. I think he realized Maura was ignoring him and didn't want to talk. And again, check out the previous episodes for an extensive discussion on that. This is where I think the call from Fred's phone to Bill Rausch early Sunday morning gets interesting. Billy Rausch has given a couple different versions of that call. In one, he says the following from the Caledonian Record, February 27, 2004. She said Murray had called Bill February 8th and was crying because of the previous Saturday accident, though he didn't feel that was it. He told her on a scale of 1 to 10 it was only a 3 or a 4, she said. He had to talk to her a long time to calm her down. We are convinced something happened at school, and her Amherst friends know. I believe this is Sharon speaking here. I've discussed that quote many, many times. This is early on. This is that same February. We are convinced something happened at school, and her Amherst friends know. So that's from the Rausch, from at least Sharon Rausch, whereas Fred Murray states that nothing before matters, which is weird. These are two polar opposite statements from Sharon and from Fred. Continuing on here with the post. However, Bill Rausch told Tim and Lance that he didn't find out about the accident in Hadley until he arrived in New Hampshire and Fred told him about it. It's interesting, in my opinion, that Maura would call Bill Rausch immediately following the accident with the Corolla early Sunday morning from Fred's phone, but then seemingly ignore Bill Rausch to her phone after. I keep going back to Bill Rausch's half-hour call home early Sunday afternoon, February 8th, and his call with McDonald Monday night, February 9th. I think Bill Rausch was telling his parents something dire involving Maura, and by the time Monday night rolled around, he realized Maura was ignoring him. He called up McDonald for advice. I was about to actually state, do we know for certain that Maura called Bill and it wasn't Fred calling Bill Rausch? And a couple of posters are actually going to discuss this point. Bill Rausch has also never brought up the detail about Maura using Fred's cell, if that was her. And when she got the cell back, it's avoided altogether. Wouldn't it be extremely odd that your girlfriend's dad looks like he's calling you so early in the morning? Also, it's a 10-minute call or whatever. And then Bill Rausch calls it back for 5 minutes, immediately wonder why. A response here. Because it was probably Fred calling him, not Maura. I have not ruled out that Bill Rausch could have been in the area early Sunday a.m. and stalking Maura Murray. He tried to push someone off an escalator, so I would not think twice about running a woman off the road. Maybe Maura Murray had to tell Fred because his new car was wrecked. Maybe the Rausch is paid to fix it. Who knows? I just hope law enforcement does. Another follow-up post here. It just seems something really kooky going on. With all of Bill Rausch's recent court issues, the family has stayed away from saying anything about Bill Rausch. It appears as though both families are covering for each other over something. And the response here, yes, and I have a feeling that something is illegal or not very nice. So, yeah, that's actually an interesting point, because what other motivation would there be to cover for each other? I mean, Fred Murray stated that Bill Rausch was the salt of the earth. I mean, that's a very interesting statement from a guy who, I mean, did Julie Murray not tell Fred that Bill had previously cheated on Maura? Because she knew, apparently. I mean, Julie Murray seems to have known Bill Rausch rather well, both at West Point, similar circle of friends, etc., or however many encounters they had with each other. I mean, it's weird. It's definitely weird. But if they're covering for each other, that actually kind of sort of makes sense and does explain certain things. Now, maybe it's not illegal. Maybe it's just something that, some kind of dirty laundry they don't want aired, and it's not illegal at all. And they believe it has nothing to do with the case, but maybe it does. Regarding the statement of, wouldn't it be extremely odd that your girlfriend's dad looks like he's calling you so early in the morning? It sure would be. When Bill Rausch got that call, it would have showed up as an incoming call from Fred's number. Unless Bill Rausch was expecting a call from Fred at that hour, it naturally would have made Bill Rausch, or anyone for that matter, think there was some sort of emergency. I have never ruled out that it was Fred calling Bill Rausch and Bill Rausch calling him back. It certainly would explain Bill Rausch then waiting until the early afternoon Sunday, February 8th to call his parents. I think the call from Fred's phone to Bill Rausch at that odd hour Sunday morning sparked some type of reaction on his part, and he got his parents involved. Another post, it seems for some reason both families have downplayed the severity of all the calls to one another, and the fact that both Fred and Kathleen specifically told Cecil Smith that Maura went up there to seriously harm herself Tuesday afternoon. Why didn't Bill Rausch answer the call from Maura's cell Sunday afternoon if he was so desperate to locate her? He had call waiting and was allegedly talking with Kate. And again, that's a point that I went over in the previous episode. Make sure you check that out. It is indeed weird. It is indeed very weird. I mean, unless, of course, when he called Kate, if Maura's there, is Maura talking to Bill from Kate's side and someone else has Maura's cell phone? And Maura told Bill that? So that's why, I mean, I don't know. If there is some kind of CI situation, and both the Murray and Rauch families are the good guys, and they're trying to help Maura out with some kind of CI situation, corrupt police, etc., they probably wouldn't be flat out stating that. Maybe they did tell the FBI, maybe the FBI knows, but they wouldn't publicly make those statements. So does this have something to do with some kind of CI situation, and they can't disclose any of that information? Does that also explain it? Was Fred really calling Bill Rausch to tell him how much trouble Maura was in? And then Bill Rausch calls his former West Point professor for backup, basically, explaining the CI situation, because this is a guy at West Point, military connections, etc. Maybe they were the ones that got the FBI involved, because that was the story, right? There's some kind of family friend FBI that got involved. Was this all because Maura was involved in some kind of CI situation? Now, to all the coincidence theorists in this case, and the Dunning-Kruger crowd, UMass actually has a history of recruiting student CIs, some of which have died. So it's not like there's not precedent here. It's weird, like these goofs, these coincidence theorist goofs, act like this is all completely impossible when it's actually already happened. It's not even a theoretical. Now, obviously, we don't know if that's the situation with Maura, but it's clearly been the situation with other students. So UMass does not have a great track record regarding UMPD CIs of that nature. Another post here, for all the calls Bill Rausch made Sunday going into Tuesday afternoon before Fred talked to him, I don't understand why Bill Rausch didn't just call Fred up and asked if Maura was okay because he couldn't reach her. I have a theory that Fred called Bill Rausch Sunday morning and told him something he didn't want to hear. Bill Rausch then calls his parents later on that day, and then a whole bunch of other numbers such as Kate, McDonald, etc. I think the one person he wanted to avoid talking to was Fred. I don't know why, but I think it's possible Fred said something to him that again sparked a reaction. When Fred called Bill Rausch Tuesday afternoon, February 10th, Bill Rausch had no choice but to answer. I also theorize that when Fred told Julie to stay put at Fort Bragg, it was because Fred was trying to take care of something only he and Bill Rausch knew about regarding Maura. It was Maura's disappearance that then forced them to team up, because it might very well have been Fred and Bill Rausch that felt responsible in some way. I also believe Bill Rausch got McDonald on board because he didn't want to be stuck having to deal with Fred the whole time he was in New England. There would be some real guilt there, looking for your missing girlfriend alongside her father and the real possibility she wasn't coming back. Wow, has that been possibly the most revealing post in years regarding the Maura Murray case, if that's all true? I mean, I can't understate the astute nature of those observations of of these theoretical exchanges, because again, this is Mindshock. I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue, but if that's true, that actually does explain quite a bit. That explains quite a bit. If Bill Rausch really was in the area, or even if he wasn't, if Fred found out that Bill Rausch was cheating on her, what if, and Maura told him she didn't feel comfortable with him or whatever, and that she wanted to break up, but she feared he would not accept that for whatever reason, and he would just keep calling her forever and stalking her, maybe Fred told Bill Rausch to leave his daughter alone. Is that a possibility? Because if he told Bill Rausch something else, if he was still friendly with Bill Rausch, wouldn't they have talked in the interim before she went missing? If he was on, let's say he said that Maura maybe, I mean, it's tough to dissect that, but if he told Bill Rausch to stay away from Maura and then Maura disappears, if Maura told Fred about whatever was going on with Billy, if it was bad, I mean, what does that mean? Or perhaps if Billy Rausch had been abusive in the past, what if Maura told her dad that? What kind of reaction would that be? But then why would Billy call Fred back after he had said that? I mean, obviously without knowing exactly what they talked about, it'd be impossible to know, but it does explain quite a few things, and that also would explain why Bill Rausch actually never searched alongside Fred. The official story, they wanted to cover more ground, so Bill Rausch went to all these other places, allegedly with McDonald, but who knows. But he apparently was not close with Fred, searching with Fred. That is interesting. Another post here. I wish someone would ask Julie why, according to her, she was told by her father to stay put in North Carolina, but Bill Rausch and his parents zipped up to New England to be there the same day Fred arrived. Either Fred was expecting Bill Rausch and his parents, or he was surprised to see them when they all arrived later Wednesday night. It can't be both. This is why I believe Bill Rausch and Fred were in the know about something dire regarding Maura and wanted to take care of whatever that was themselves. Otherwise, I see no reason why Fred would call Bill Rausch Tuesday, tell him essentially nothing, yet it prompted the reaction it did with Bill Rausch and his parents. Or the Sunday morning call. I mean, the way to really solve all this is, again, not lie detector tests, the brain fingerprint scans the military uses, and the espionage intelligence agencies use. The brain fingerprint scan that Stephen Avery subjected himself to, proving that his brainwave activity did not recognize any of what the state alleged regarding how he harmed Teresa Hallback, if he did. So if he really is guilty of what happened to Teresa, it's nothing like the state's case presented, because his brainwave activity did not recognize any of that, because the brain fingerprint scan bypasses any intention to lie or tell the truth. It's irrelevant. It only measures the brainwave activity in recognizing certain information. And again, there's a $150,000 reward for anybody who can beat it. I don't believe anybody's collected that reward yet. And it was admissible in court at least once. So, again, obviously the jury's still out in terms of the court system. I don't know if it's been used more than 1 or 2 times. But again, the military uses it. Intelligence agencies use it. There's a reason they use it, because it's pretty sound science. And if all these individuals involved did this test, I mean, we would know exactly what everybody talked, or at least what they didn't talk about. We'd be able to at least rule out different things, or if they're telling the truth and that could be verified other ways, then we would know the exact truth. But it would, at minimum, eliminate many possible avenues of investigation to focus on the remaining ones in hopes of actually solving this case. And like most cases, the Delphi case, another arrest, regardless of whether you believe it's a patsy in Richard Allen, either way, it's moving the case forward in some capacity. It's keeping the awareness up, etc. I believe that case will be solved. I actually also think, I might be in the minority, I think the Maura Murray case will eventually be solved too, because there's just too many people who know things There's just too much investigation that has gone on. There's too many alleged records and videos that theoretically should still remain. Liquor store footage has never been released. I mean, did the ABC brewery have footage? Every other case, they're releasing footage, but for whatever reason, the Maura Murray case, they don't release footage of a missing persons. That's also really strange. And making sense of all this insanity between UMass and Haverhill and New Hampshire State Police. It's tough. It's tough, but there's clearly more going on that has been said. I don't know what it is. I am not claiming anything is true or untrue. This is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. Hope you guys found another edition of Mindshock True Crime interesting and informative. Plenty more episodes to come. If you want to help out the podcast, help support the podcast, help us get more mind-shocking episodes out and keep up awareness in cases, you can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like and share, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.